Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. It is a Friday, this 13th day of June. I'm bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. Former President Rodrigo Duterte has submitted an official appeal to the ICC for interim release to an undisclosed country. According to his lawyer, Nicholas Kaufman, the country has agreed to abide by any conditions set by the ICC. House Speaker Martin Romualdez expresses serious concern over the Senate's move to send back the impeachment articles against Vice President Sara Duterte to the House of Representatives. Senate President Chis Escudero, meanwhile, maintains that the House must follow the Senate's order as an impeachment court. And in India, 241 were killed in a plane crash near Ahmedabad Airport. Air India reports one survivor from the 242 on board now receiving medical care. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, former President Rodrigo Duterte has formally appealed to the International Criminal Court for interim release to an undisclosed country. Duterte's lawyer, Nicholas Kaufman, said a specific government has expressed advance and principled agreement to receive Duterte during the period of his provisional liberty. Now, according to the filing, the unnamed country has committed to comply with any conditions the ICC may impose. The defense argued that Duterte does not pose a flight risk and is unlikely to continue committing crimes. His legal team cited his age and health as additional humanitarian grounds for his temporary release. In other news, amid growing unrest over immigration enforcement, U.S. Marines will soon join National Guard units on the streets of Los Angeles. The move comes as protests escalate and authorities enforce a citywide curfew. Here is the report.
U.S. Marines are set to join National Guard troops on the streets of Los Angeles to suppress immigration-related protests and escalating violence. According to the U.S. Northern Command, the Marines have completed their training and will be deployed by Friday. Similar to the National Guard units deployed by President Donald Trump, these Marines will be authorized to detain individuals who interfere with federal immigration officers during enforcement operations. Local law enforcement has already begun making mass arrests of demonstrators in violation of the emergency curfew, which runs from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. LA time. President Donald Trump explained that the deployment of troops is aimed at liberating Los Angeles from the violence of protesters.
Within the span of a few decades, Los Angeles has gone from being one of the cleanest, safest, and most beautiful cities on earth to being a trash heap with entire neighborhoods under the control of transnational gangs and criminal networks. It's horrible what's happened so quickly. As the entire world can now see, uncontrolled migration leads to chaos, dysfunction, and disorder.
However, many residents have expressed opposition to the military presence, saying they do not welcome the intervention. The unrest is not limited to Los Angeles. Protests have also erupted in several other major U.S. cities, including Washington, D.C., New York City, Seattle, Chicago, and Las Vegas. Meanwhile, Department of Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary for Migrant Workers Affairs Robert Ferrer Jr. reported that no Filipinos have been arrested in connection with the recent protests in Los Angeles.
I have updates from our Consul General in Los Angeles, Adelio Cruz. He said no Filipino or Filipino-American, for that matter, has been arrested or detained from the ongoing protest.
Ferrer also advised Filipinos in the United States to refrain from participating in immigration-related demonstrations to avoid potential legal complications.
Air India confirmed 241 fatalities after a plane had crashed near the airport in India's western city of Ahmedabad. The Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner with 242 people on board was headed for Gatwick Airport south of the British capital and crashed onto a medical college hostel during lunch hour. Air India said there was one sole survivor who was being treated in the hospital. Now, according to a top state police officer, the known surviving passenger was in seat 11A next to an emergency exit. The House of Representatives is holding the Senate responsible for the failure to pass the proposed 200 peso wage hike bill before the 19th Congress adjourned. House spokesperson Attorney Princess Abante explained that the lower chamber had prepared for bicameral negotiations and was open to compromise. However, she said the Senate's refusal to engage ultimately stalled the process and left the proposal unresolved.
The Senate killed the 200 peso wage hike bill. Ayaw ng Senado makipag-usap. Ang gusto nila, tanggapin na lang ng tao ang 100 pesos nila. Bakit? Bakit binabarya ng Senado ang mga manggagawa? We were ready to deliberate. We came in good faith. But what the Senate gave us was a take it or leave it ultimatum. Wala silang balak makipag-usap. Ang gusto nila, susunod lang kami sa gusto nila.
The House proposal sought a 200 peso increase in daily wages while the Senate pushed for a smaller 100 peso hike. Lawmakers had hoped to reconcile the two versions before the session ended this week, but no agreement was reached.
Mukhang nilaro lang nila talaga yung mga manggagawa. Dahil bagamat totoo na may pagkakaiba po ang Senado at saka ang lower house sa kanilang amount, hindi naman po insurmountable yon eh. Talagang meron po nangyaring machination means para talaga deliberately patayin yung batas.
Now we go back to our top story for this morning, and that is the Duterte camp requesting for an interim release from the ICC. To talk about that and more, we have Attorney Nery Colmenares joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Attorney. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Hi, Gretchen. Good morning to all your viewers.
Okay, Attorney, that news broke last night, the Duterte camp asking for interim release, but the more shocking concern for the prosecution is, or the lawyers for the victims rather, particularly Attorney Cristina Conti, is that the prosecutor is open to this, that they will not contest that interim release. Your thoughts?
Well, actually, the statement of the defense is that the prosecutor will not oppose if Duterte follows the obligations in Annex A. But the entire, if you notice, the entire defense application is littered with answering the objections of the prosecution, because Duterte is a flight risk, Duterte can intimidate witnesses, and Duterte can, of course, not follow the orders of the court later if he's released. So this is not yet over, Gretchen, in the sense that we will await, of course, the comment of the prosecution. And secondly, that this is still something before the pretrial chamber, which, of course, as counsel of the victims, we will oppose. There is still a process to be undertaken. So what is noticeable in the defense application is that now President Duterte is asking for humanitarian consideration. It's now respecting and saying human rights, my human rights, it states that I should be released. Which is ironic, Gretchen, because he never listened to the plea of the victims for humanitarian consideration and human rights during his term. So I think that will go against the decision, that will go against the application of President Duterte. And I would like to think that the pretrial chamber will not necessarily give in immediately to the request of the defense in this case.
Wait, Attorney Nery Colmenares, of course, is counsel to the victims in this particular case. Pero sa ngayon, undisclosed country ang pinag-uusapan. Meron po kaya kayong haka-haka kung saan po ang kanilang request?
No, I don't really know which country will do that, because this is a big obligation for that country. The promise of the defense here in this application is one. He is going to obey the orders of the court. Two, he will not intimidate witnesses and investigators and lawyers. And three, that he will not escape. So let's go first to the, he will follow the orders. President Duterte has always attacked the court. He's always said there is no jurisdiction by these whites. he called the prosecutor, the monkey or something, attacking the prosecutor. So how can he now turn around and say that he is going to obey the court? And secondly, he commits himself that he will not escape, he will not intimidate witnesses, etc. But look, President Duterte has a track record for so many years of saying something and doing another. How can the court trust him for committing to follow what he promises when he has a track record of not following what he promised? So I think the courts will not listen to this kind of commitment on his part. And thirdly, escape. President Duterte, according to the application, he is no longer powerful. He has not the resources and the contacts and so on to escape. But look, President Duterte is still powerful in that Dutertes were able to stop the impeachment trial despite the demands of majority of the Filipinos. And secondly, they won a lot of seats in the last election. He is mayor of Davao. Can he not intimidate witness? He can. He is mayor of Davao despite the fact that he won overwhelmingly in Davao. So for me, all these commitments about following the ICC orders, because he doesn't want to go to trial. The moment the charges are confirmed, Gretchen, and a trial will ensue, President Duterte has no evidence to present in the trial that will acquit him. Anong ebidensya niya ilalagay doon na wala siyang kinalaman sa EJK? I don't see that. So, the moment the trial is confirmed, I think escape is now a possibility. He can return to the Philippines and he thinks he will be safe here because he has a lot of supporters here. Is there a way that he can return without the ICC knowing? Of course, yes. We have seen how Philippine territory can be entered by anybody. I don't see all these things alleged by the defense is for us as lawyers of the victim is contestable, and we will contest that before the pre-trial chamber. We will consult with the victims. We will study the application. But we will oppose it in the ICC and have a strong comment with the prosecution on this, especially if there is an obligation that we believe Duterte will not follow with regards to the ICC.
So you will submit an appeal to the prosecution to change their mind in terms of opposing this interim release. Tama po ba?
Actually, we don't even know if it is true. This is still an allegation of the defense. If you notice, they said the prosecution will not oppose if Duterte will follow Annex A. Here comes. Then the defense submits Annex B, which is not Annex A, meaning to say the prosecution, according to the defense, already said, okay, we're okay with that as long as he follows the obligations under Annex A. But then the defense says, well, we're going to submit Annex B, which says otherwise, less obligations and other commitments. So I don't see the prosecution still agreeing to the counter proposal of the defense that instead of the obligations enumerated by the prosecution, the defense is asserting that it should be another set of obligations. We don't know what the obligations are. They did not attach the annexes. But there is a counter proposal on the part of the defense. So we're not yet sure if the prosecution will agree to the counter proposal of the defense. In any case, the victims will still intervene or file a comment with the pretrial chamber. It's up to the pretrial chamber if they're going to listen to the victims, but we're going to be actively opposing this because we don't think President Duterte is qualified under Article 58.1 of the Rome Statute. 58.1 says that maybe you can have your interim release if you will not escape or be a flight risk, if you will not endanger the investigation of the court, so for example, intimidating the witnesses, and 3, you will no longer commit crimes. So all these things we believe are non-existent as of now, and President Duterte can still do that. Look, the attacks against the victims and their counsel, Attorney Cristina Conte, for example, were there after the arrest of President Duterte, and we are sure it will escalate once he is out and can orchestrate the attacks against the witnesses and their families, because President Duterte is intolerant of dissent. He doesn't want people criticizing him or investigating him. So, yeah, we are saying if the ICC grants the interim release, the attacks against the victims and their lawyers will escalate because Duterte is now free to conduct this attack.
Attorney, I noticed a change in tone in the former president when he was already in The Hague. Parang sinasabihan po niya yung mga followers niya na kumalma lamang, i-respect due process. Pero yung intimidation that is done online, for example, harassment by different social media accounts, could that count as intimidation, even if it's not directly the former president, but his supporters or his following or fan base, the one doing it? Parang kasama po ba yun? Maaari po bang maging grounds po yun?
Yes. In fact, a lot of social media attacks have already silenced many of the witnesses. We are afraid na masama pamilya nila, maatake sila. It's really one of the most important developments in this decade is the fact that social media can really cripple you. Social media can really intimidate you. Social media can actually silence you. We're having problems with some witnesses who do not want to be red tagged or to be trolled. It's really, maybe 10 years ago or so, maybe people say, it's just an internet, social media. But no, this is a present threat right now. Sometimes more dangerous than the physical threats itself. So yeah, it is still a very valid defense on our part to say that the attacks are there. But and who knows, there could have been some physical intimidation of some of the victims and the witnesses during in the country. That's why it's not really easy for us to find witnesses from other parts of the country, because they say he's still powerful. The police that he commanded are still there. We see them in the community. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was in prison. We saw how these policemen killed our son, our daughter, and we cannot testify. So yeah, it is still there. And for us, the court, the pretrial chamber, must take into consideration the fact that President Duterte is a very powerful individual still in the Philippines, more powerful now after the election, that the ICC cannot just be beguiled by his, paawa effect during the initial appearance. And I don't think, he's, as I said, he is known to renege on his commitments, and there is no assurance that he will not renege on this one if he is granted release by the ICC.
Attorney Neri, of course, the former president has just won the mayoral seat in Davao, and his daughter is the vice president. Could that be used as arguments? I mean, for pag mas malapit yung bansa, mas mabilis puntahan. Also, he's 80 years old, looking at the other side of it. But pero paano po kaya yung kalakaran dyan, no? Kung sakasakaling mag-grant itong interim release, will he be, what are the possibilities in terms of his freedom, limited freedom?
Well, if there's an interim release, the custodial state, of course, has to commit to present him to the ICC upon orders. And then the court will review the interim release every 120 days. That's according to the rules of procedure of the ICC, under Rule 117, 118 of the rules of procedure, and of course, Article 58 and 60, which we believe is he is violative of Article 58, 59, and 60. So we think we will oppose that on those grounds. But yeah, that's the thing. It can be reviewed still, of course, every at least 120 days, depending on the court, whether or not the interim release will continue or not continue. So he promised not to speak in public, but of course he can always say the message to his family, and his family can always mention that in public. The ICC should know how tricky President Duterte's commitments are. He may not directly be saying as stated in public, but all his messages will surely be given to the public and to his supporters, and that can not only in relation to the case, but even inflame the conditions here in the Philippines, which is already politically divided as of now. So it's not only a threat on the ICC case, but his interim release can also be a threat to the stability of this country, Gretchen. So for all those reasons, I really hope the prosecution, of course, the victims will oppose it, and even the Philippine government who cooperated with the ICC, if they really want to, they should also oppose this, because this is, of course, also a threat on the stability of this country further because of Duterte's, means to do it until now. And we will gather, of course, also support from international human rights and human rights organizations, and for them to express their opinion also on this issue, because that's really very strange that a powerful dictator who killed thousands during his term is now saying, I will no longer commit a crime, I will follow the ICC. For us, there is no factual basis on legal basis for the application of the defense for the interim release. Let the trial ensue, begin. Otherwise, parang impeachment na rin ito. Hindi pa nagsimula ang trial, release na.
Oo nga ho, parang, sabi ko nga, parang impeachment po yata pinag-uusapan natin kasi escape trial ang nababanggit eh. Oo. Pero actually, attorney, we have yet to hear from the prosecution team themselves. As you mentioned, it is still the defense speaking on behalf of everyone. But thank you so much for speaking on behalf of the victims. We have Attorney Nery Colmenares, of course, counsel to the EJK victims, and we await the response of the prosecution. In the meantime, maraming salamat po for spending time with us this morning. We are Morning Matters. Don't go away. We'll be back with more stories right after a quick break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. House Speaker Martin Romualdez says the Senate's decision to return the Duterte articles of impeachment to the lower house is deeply concerning. In a speech right before the House adjourned its third regular session, Romualdez defended his chamber, saying the impeachment proceedings followed the law. Still, he vowed to comply with the requirements of the impeachment court.
These articles were transmitted by the chamber in accordance with the Constitution and with the overwhelming support of 215 members who answered the people's call for accountability. The House of Representatives acted not out of haste, but with deliberate care. We followed the law, we honored our mandate, and above all, we stood for what the Filipino people deserve.
Meanwhile, the Senate President maintained that the lower house should follow the orders of the Senate as an impeachment court. Escudero likewise said that Vice President Sara Duterte should do the same with regard to the summons issued to her.
Pero dalawa ang kautusan ng impeachment court. Hindi lamang yung attestation ng pagtupad doon sa certification sa pagtupad sa 1-year ban na provision ng konstitusyon. Pero pati yung attestation na interesado pa rin sila sa pagbubukas ng bagong kongreso na ipursige ang kaso dahil nga doon pa lamang magsisimula ang paglitis. Nampa siya ng impeachment court bilang mga taga-usig, dapat nilang galangin at sundin yun. Papareho din sa parte ni VP Sara, dapat galangin at sundin din niya yung summons na inisu ng impeachment court.
Let's discuss that further with Professor Dennis Coronacion, Chairman of the UST Political Science Department. Magandang umaga po sa inyo, Prof.
Hi, magandang umaga, Gretchen. Magandang umaga rin sa iyo mga taga-subaybay.
Professor, the decision to remand the articles of impeachment back to the House of Representatives, how do you assess the impact of that? And what's been happening now? Parang nagpapasahan ng bola pag nakikita po natin.
Oo nga, we were expecting that once the Senate had started with the preliminaries of the impeachment trial, we thought that it was going to be it was going to move forward. Pero ito nangyari nung last session of San Impeachment Court, ni-remand yung impeachment complaint back to the House. Now it seems that the current composition of the House has no intention of complying with the order of the impeachment court. So ang tanong doon, what's going to happen? Will the impeachment trial push through? It will be, because it seems that the situation is heading towards what we call a stalemate. Walang solution to it. Or a constitutional crisis in the extreme case.
Actually, they have two requests, no? The Senate, upon remanding the articles of impeachment. Yung una is for the House of Representatives to certify the non-violation of the provision of filing only once a year. And the second one is for the 20th Congress House of Representatives to communicate to the Senate that it is willing and ready to pursue the impeachment complaint against the Vice President. So yung una po, parang I think parang meron naman pong openness, no, to give that certification. But it also begs the question, what is the purpose of that? Hindi ba pagka na-transmit na, parang na-certify na rin? At pangalawa, hindi ba this constitutionality issue has already been filed before the Supreme Court?
Yeah, that's why I think it's useless for the Senate to do that. Kasi nga, that's right, meron ng legal action, I think, filed by the camp of the Vice President questioning the constitutional infirmity of the impeachment complaint. And the same was raised by Senator Bato de la Rosa, in his speech during the session about the impeachment trial. So parang redundant na to, and since this is redundant, isipin mo what's the motive of the Senate for remanding the impeachment complaint to the House of Representatives, and for making them do an act which I think tama ka by the mere fact na na-transmit na nila ito sa that means any constitutional infirmity was already taken into account bago pa lang ito transmit. Tapos it's also telling us na kumbaga one of the implications is that parang ang gusto sabihin is that pinupolitika niyo ba itong impeachment trial kasi yung very basic task ninyo to see to it na walang constitutional infirmity ay hindi nyo na-overlook nyo. So parang gano'n ang nagiging message ng Senado sa House. Parang pinupulit ito to the point na yung legal aspect nakakalimutan nyo na.
But it also begs the question of why this is being brought up by the senator judges. Are they within their bounds to question that, or do you think that should come from the defense? Because yun ang sinasabi ng iba, parang bakit kayo pa yung nag-file ng motion to have these certifications na kayo naman ang kumbaga husgado dito, hindi kayo yung defense. Parang you're lawyering pa for the Vice President.
Tama rin yung point na yun, yung question na yun, kasi if we're going to base it on the practices of the regular courts, hindi naman talaga yung judge, yung presiding judge ang nagque-question ng magre-raise yan eh. It should be the defense team. Tapos on that basis, pag may nakitang infirmity sa isang complaint, sa isang legal complaint, doon pala mag-move yung defense to have the case dismissed. Pero in this case, it's the senator judges who one of the senator judges and supported by the other senator judges yung motion na ipa-dismiss yung and nagkaroon na nga lang ng compromise parang instead of outright dismissal i-remand na lang. Pero it seems na parang it's going to end up in the same way as pag dinismiss mo, no? Parang eventually wala na ring pag ni-remand mo, it's like saying na parang it's a softer version of a dismissal, an outright dismissal of the case.
Some would argue that the second demand or order of the Senate to have the communication from the 20th Congress to certify that they would want to pursue the impeachment trial kind of guarantees that this trial would cross over or carry over to the 20th Congress. Do you agree? Do you see a possibility na hindi na matutuloy yung trial mismo at magkakaroon nga ng functional dismissal?
Well, there are at least two possibilities. One possibility is that matutuloy pa rin because probably the members of the 20th Congress are going to comply with the order of the Senate as sitting as an impeachment court. The other possibility naman is that yung first possibility pwedeng matuloy pero given the composition of the Senate in the 20th Congress at saka given what we saw during the last impeachment session, parang ang tanong doon magbabago pa ba yung boto? Parang kasi ang tingin ko yung voting ng Senate sitting as an impeachment court yung 18-5 would not change significantly kahit pa lumipat mag-cross point sa 20th Congress. Parang yan Oo. Parang hindi na magbabago yan. So in case magkaroon man umabot yung impeachment trial sa point na kinakailangan na nilang mag-decide whether to convict or acquit, I think we had seen a preview of what's going to be the vote of the Senate should it come to that point. Ngayon, yung isa naman, pwedeng maging functional dismissal nga kasi a lot of things can happen from the time na yung June 11 until the new members of the House will take over. So marami pwede pa mangyari and maraming uncertainties. So pwedeng yung sinasabing functional dismissal can also happen. Plus the fact na it seems that the stalemate is going to, in the extreme case, pwedeng mag-lead constitutional crisis.
But of course, going into the 20th Congress, iba na rin po yung composition ng Senate and papasok po yung ilan sa mga veterano. Katulad na lamang po ni Senator Tito Sotto, who I got the chance to speak with. And he was saying na itong pagre-remand ng articles of impeachment ay legal kung nasimulan yung trial. If it was a request done, upon hearing both the defense and the prosecution, kapag nilatag na nila yung kanilang mga ebidensya at may request to certify the constitutionality, then it would have been legal. Pero yung problema po hindi man lang binasa itong articles of impeachment at dumiretso na sa pagre-remand. Para po sa inyo, what are the possible political consequences for both the administration and opposition if the impeachment process does stall, and given the state of how everything has transpired?
Well, I think if the impeachment complaint is going to stall, the trial is going to stall, it's going to, kasi sino ba magbe-benefit dyan, it's the Vice President herself. So since if we're going to look at the broader context, all of this has something to do with the 2028 presidential election. So is it should the impeachment trial stall? What would it do with the plan of the vice president to run as president for the 2028 elections? I think it's going to make her even stronger. O kasi sa ngayon nga may momentum na eh. She has remained popular along with her father. So I think it would be the same. It would be yung kanyang popularity would reach same level of popularity by 2028. So on the other hand, yun ang mga administration nag-struggle naman even the president yung kanyang popularity, yung kanyang approval rating, they continue to struggle. Hindi maganda yung performance niya, no? So I think in the long run, the vice president, should the impeachment trial not push through, is going to benefit a lot.
Whichever way it goes, right? All right. Okay, we shall see what happens in the upcoming months. As you said, marami pang pwedeng mangyari. But in the meantime, maraming salamat, Professor Dennis Coronacion, for weighing in on with us and what happened over at the Senate and the impeachment court. Stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back right after a short break. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Noon. Here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. We had the opportunity to speak with Senator-elect Tito Sotto on the impeachment proceedings and other key issues. Senator-elect Tito Sotto criticized the Senate's handling of the impeachment complaint against Vice President Sara Duterte, saying the process veered away from constitutional procedure. Sotto questions the decision to return the articles to the House without even initiating a proper trial. He emphasizes that such actions should follow hearings from both sides, not be decided preemptively. Now let's take a look at that interview. Alam po natin ang daming kaganapan, 19th Congress pa lang, and it is wrapping up in this manner. I mean, you on the sidelines, what are you thinking of what's happening at the Senate? Ang daming interpretations ng parliamentary procedures. Here and there, at ang daming katanungan. Everybody's confused. Given your experience, ano pong palagay po ninyo sa mga nangyayari? Tama ba ang nangyayari sa Senado ngayon?
Hindi. I'm quite disappointed because there were procedures that were not followed as early as February when the articles of impeachment was transmitted to the Senate. No? But before that, bago yung articles of impeachment, nung namomonitor ko ang mga procedures sa Senate, may mga improvements na dapat ginawa nila or gawin. Or all they have to do is follow the old style, us old-timers, which I did. I served 9 Senate presidents. So when I became Senate President, and I was Majority Leader before that, I made sure that the rules are followed. Rule number 1, sabi ro sa Constitution, o sabi sa rule, 3:00 ng hapon, session kayo eh. Bakit 3:30 na, wala pa kayo? Di ba? Yung mga ganun kasimple. So, nung panahon ko, hindi pwede yun. For 4.5 years, 3 o'clock, I will bang the gavel.
Yun ang rule
isa sa
talaga.
mga-
Lahat ng
Oo.
plenary hearings, dapat 3 o'clock.
3:00, nag-uumpisa ka dapat. Ano?
Yung oath-taking nga po, parang 4:30. Basta late sila no?
Doon pa lang medyo, sabi ko nga, disappointed ako. Sabagay, kanya-kanyang style yan. Gusto nila, style sila tardy. Okay lang, sige. Pero, so, if you ask me, anong opinion ko, yun nga, those were part of the disappointments, I could say. Now, when it comes to the goings-on lately, yung February 5 na sinubmit ng articles of impeachment sa Senate, I said I was disappointed because I was expecting the Senate, through the Senate leadership, and in this case, the Senate President, who received it from the Senate Secretariat after it was transmitted by the HOR, should have informed the Senate and officially referred it to the Committee on Rules. The Rules Committee kasi should handle that. And it's headed by the Majority Leader.
Hindi po ba magko-convene muna yung court bago ipasa sa Committee on Rules?
Hindi. Dapat yung Committee on Rules ang pagpapasahan mo. At yung
From the HOR?
Yes.
Sabi ni-
No. Through the Senate. And the Senate leadership must refer it to the Committee on Rules. Yun ang tamang procedure. Alright? Why? Kahit yung simple na bill ganun ang ginagawa mo on first reading You will always refer it to the proper committee handling that particular bill. How much more articles of impeachment? So, mapapagbintangan ka, inupuan mo. Because you did. You had 3 hours to do that. They received it at 4 p.m. They ended the session around 7 o'clock.
Parang may sinabi po si Senate President Chis Escudero na sa Committee on Justice ni-refer at yun ang pagkakaintindi niya na dapat sa Committee on Justice.
I doubt if they really did that, na re-refer sa Committee on Justice. Hindi rin. They did not refer it to any committee. There was no referral. All right? Now, whatever reason they are saying or they are using, after pagdating ng June 3, ginawa nila yung dapat gawin ni-refer sa Committee on Rules. Pero when did they do that? How many months after? Hindi nakakapagtaka na kaming mga veterano of 2 impeachment proceedings, magtaka at maging disappointed on how it's being run.
Pero yung pag-remand back to the House of Representatives, is that even legal? A legal option for the Senate to do as an impeachment court?
Probably yes, if they have reviewed and started the impeachment. Para mong nasabi, laman nun, hindi ka pa kayo nag-try. Hindi nyo pinakinggan yung articles. Hindi pa sinubmit. So, no, but even beyond that, no, not beyond, even before that muna, dun muna ako sa aking punto, which is, how did you do it? What did they do? They called for an impeachment court, nag-oath-taking, pagkatapos nag-motion sa loob ng impeachment court. That is not done. A senator judge does not file a motion for a resolution. Look at the 2 other impeachments that we had. Look at the impeachments of the other countries. Walang ganon. They should have done it as a legislative body. Doon pa lang, iba na Iba na yung ginawa. Tumawag muna ng impeachment court, pagkatapos parang gustong i-dismiss. Di ba? Pero naging remand. Let me set the record straight, by the way. I am not in favor of impeachment. I'm not also in favor. I'm not in favor. I am, shall we say, neutral. Bakit? First of all, the Vice President is a friend of mine. Lalo na, the very dear friend of mine is the father. So, I can be very neutral in this. I'm talking of proper procedures. that rules and procedures should be followed strictly in this case because nakataya dito division of the country, nakataya dito the political career of a
The second
of
highest
a
official.
second highest official of the land. Kaya dapat yan, sinusunod lahat ng tama ng proper dapat gawin.
Pero
ng
sabi po ni
legislatura.
Senate President Cheese, yung proceed forthwith ay actually inaffirm to ni Associate Justice Adolf Ascuna na siyang sumulat no forthwith na yung forthwith gives some wiggle room to have a reasonable form of delay.
Kaya nga.
Depende sa konteksto na
Kaya nga.
pumapalibot dun sa impeachment.
Oo.
At according to him then, reasonable yung pag-delay dahil nga nasa gitna ng campaign season, magkakahalalan, at yung pag-delay nito after the elections was reasonable, and if they get to convene as a court at nabasa yung articles of impeachment at nasimulan yung yung pag-summon, the Senate President would have done his job already. Don't you agree with that? That there was reasonable delay?
Reasonable delay kung nasa Committee on Rules na. Dapat nasunod yung forthwith. And a reasonable delay kung pagkatanggap, ni-refer sa Committee on Rules. What can the Senate then do then? No? May campaign. So yun daw yung magiging delay. Pero makakakilos ang Committee on Rules. Makaka-review. Makaka-suggest sa legislative body, the Senate as a legislative body on what to do. Bakit nakapag-hearing sila? Bakit nakapag-hearing ng ilang beses si Senator Marcos? At may mga hearing sila Senator Gatchalian. Di ba?
Sa aking
In
pagkakaalala,
other words, dapat nasunod yung forthwith. Kung natanggap ng Senate President, ni-refer sa Committee on Rules, sabihin, ang Committee on Rules ngayon bahala kung anong gusto mong gawin dyan. Reviewin ninyo, padala nyo sa amin ng kopya, pag-aralan na namin yan. So, pagdating niyang gusto nilang mag-remand, June 3 lang nila pinag-usapan sa Committee on Rules nag-conduct sila as an impeachment court. It becomes premature to take the allegations of the content of the articles of impeachment without conducting a trial or an inquiry at the very least. Dapat nag-trial or nag-inquiry sa laman. Bago mo sabihin na hindi, mali itong laman. Pinag-usapan niyo ba? Akala ko ba hindi niyo ni-repair?
ano ho bang papel ng Committee on Rules? Because meron na pong Senate rules on impeachment, di po ba?
Yes. But the Committee on Rules, in the Senate, is the number one committee. It is the most powerful committee kung tutuusin because that is the reason the chairman of the Committee on Rules is the majority leader. The Committee on Rules ang dinadaanan ng lahat. Dinadaanan ng lahat ng bills. Ang nag-i-schedule kung ano iti-take up for the day or the agenda is always the Committee on Rules. Kaya siya lagi ang pinagdadaanan. And then, what contributes to my disappointment pagdating sa ganito? Kasi yung majority leader, lahat na magsasalita sa floor, dapat dumadaan sa majority leader. It is the majority leader who always tells the Senate President who to recognize. It's very seldom, unless very in rare cases, that the Senate President calls for recognizes someone who is not being recognized by the majority leader. Especially kung nabanggit ang pangalan niya. Kung nabanggit ang pangalan niya, pwedeng tumayo yan ng hindi nagsasabi sa majority leader. But always, it's the Senate President should always ask the majority leader. The majority leader says, at sino i-recognize? Nung isang gabi, nanonood ako kung sino-sino yung nagsasalita, nag-aagawan sa microphone.
Nag-i-interrupt nga po.
Asan yung majority leader? And why is the Senate President recognizing everyone? Just like that. Doon pa lang makikita mo. At saka masakit dito, they were in robes. That was the impeachment court that was happening. It is never done. The motions raised in the majority leader in the impeachment court is usually for adoption of proposed resolutions lang motions regarding procedural matters only. Ano, kahit yung mga senator judges cannot just stand for and come up with any motion. In the impeachment court, it is reserved to the prosecutors and the defense lawyers. Ganun ang dapat na procedure doon. So what I'm saying is that as a legislative body, they should have discussed that, and instead not going into the impeachment court and coming up with so many ideas and remand. Ano, yun ang punto ko doon.
Okay, bago po natin puntahan yung pag-file ng motion, gusto ko actually tanungin. Kasi nag-viral po yung video ni Senator Joel Villanueva instructing Senator Amy Marcos na magsalita na, no? Na i-interrupt niya si Senator Risa. I mean, it is within their power, or it isn't really illegal to talk like that. But it gives the impression that merong kuntsabahan sa mga senador kasi may coaching na nangyayari.
Yun ang
legal po ba yun?
Yes. You cannot help. Hindi mo masisisi ang mga tao na magbintang na sabihin na gano'n. Na mayroong ang senaryo kayong gustong gawin.
May playbook.
Oo, may playbook. Sapagkat kitang-kita. And when somebody has the floor, bakit mo ba agaw yung floor? Kaya nga tama yung sinasabi ni Senator Risa Ontiveros. I have the floor, bakit sumisingit kayo? Well, she was just polite. Hindi niya sinabi yun. Sinabi lang niya, I still have the floor, Mr. President. Dapat yun, the Senate President did not recognize anybody because she had the floor. Yun ang tamang parliamentary procedure.
And ang nangyari doon, si Senate President ay nag-suspend na lamang ng sesyon at binigay niya yung mikropono kay Senator Amy Marcos. So, hindi dapat ganon.
Hindi dapat ganon. Dapat pinatapos mo yung may hawak ng floor. Like, for example, in that case, Senator Risa, dapat pinatapos mo yun. Patapos nun, saka ka mag-suspend. Bali ko sana nagkakagulo, may emergency, kailangan ka mag-suspend kahit may nagsasalita. Pwede. Pero hindi eh.
Yung nabanggit po ninyo tungkol sa pag-file ng motion, actually, sabi po ni Associate Justice Ascuna muli that the Congress can promulgate its own rules on impeachment to effectively carry out the trial. Nasa Article 11, Section 3, Subsection 8 po yun. Pero, ibig sabihin, actually, din sinabi ni Senator Tolentino kanina na may sariling rules ang itong as an impeachment court, and they can say na pwede silang gumawa ng mga yung pagre-remand o yung mga order nila, which is yung nangyari doon dahil sa pag-file ng motion. So ano po ba yung logic doon? So bakit bawal mag-file ng motion?
Hindi pa nila binabago yung rules eh. I am the author of the impeachment rules eh. Yung kay Corona pa eh. Wala naman silang binago eh.
So doon po sa rules na yun, bawal mag-file ng motion?
Walang sinasabi ron na pwedeng basta na pwedeng mag-file ng motion ang senator judge. Wala sinasabing gano'n doon. Simple. The senator judges can ask questions for clarification. Ganun lang.
But isn't that what they did?
To the defense, to the prosecution. Hindi pa sila trial court eh. Ang nangyayari, nag-impeachment court, pero ang kilos parang legislative body. That is my point. And that should not have been the case.
They should go into trial first.
They should start the trial. And look at the allegations. And then you can say now that hindi, mali, remand natin. Di ba? Kasi ang narinig ko, the other, was it this morning or yesterday? Ang sinasabi is deemed red. Ay, hindi pwede yun. Articles of impeachment ito, deemed red. Hindi mo binasa. Paano nila babasahin? June 3 pa lang nila
Yun nga ho eh. Hindi rin binasa yung articles of impeachment.
Kaya
so in the future, that could also be questioned.
Definitely. Kaya I will not be surprised if people will, especially members of the IBP, who will question this in the Supreme Court, these actuations.
Because you need to read the articles of impeachment first before convening the court. Tama po ba?
Uh,
Mauna
they-
po yun.
They
Or-
should. Pwedeng,
But all processes should
dapat.
be
Kung ni-refer nga sa Committee on Rules kasi agad yun, then pwedeng napag-aralan na kaagad ng mga membro ng Committee on Rules. Dapat ganun ang naging procedure niya noong February
na
pa.
meron ng nakalatag na kung anong gagawin.
Oo, kasi kumbaga sa basketball, at ikaw yun
Bago
naman
tayo maglaro.
Ikaw naman nakakaintindi ka ikaw ay atleta. Kumbaga sa basketball, anong nangyari no isang araw, dinribble mo ng dinribble, nung matatapos na yung shot clock at saka mo pinasa.
Pero walang shot clock po dito.
Ay,
Parang
meron
wala.
eh.
Meron. Oo nga.
Meron eh. Dahil supposed to be, January 11, mag-adjourn sila eh. Oh. Hindi ba? January 11 ba? Yeah, January 11.
Do you think there was grave abuse of discretion?
In what sense? Na biglang nag-motion or nag-approve sila ng remand? Kasi sumunod naman sa kanila yung House eh. They can do that if they have already reviewed. I'm not saying that yung remand nila is mali Pwede. They can do that. If they already reviewed. If they went into trial or at least inquiry. Then they could have done the remand. Logically and constitutionally. Yun ang pananaw ko. And I'm sure that is the opinion of many legal luminaries. I may not be one, but my 24 years, or 28 years of background in legislation is more than taking up law.
Parang di po kayo masyadong masaya sa pamamalakad ngayon sa Senado. Does it make you want to lead the Senate as Senate President again?
If my colleagues will want me to lead, I will accept it. Now, whether I am elected a leader or not, my expertise and my track record will be used in the way the Senate is being run. Because I can always point out things that are wrong or procedures that are wrong when I am back there by July 28.
Pero given po yung political headwinds, do you think that will sit in favor with the other senators? Do you think they will be in favor of that rather? Na kayo po ay talagang stick to the rules?
Yeah, they have to.
Given the results of the last elections,
They have to.
with the overwhelming win by the Duterte candidates, yung showing po nila sa halalan, meron pong impression na baka natatakot yung itong mga senador of losing that support by 2028.
That becomes a different question or a different issue, I should say, because ang nangyayari doon, senador ka ba, ang iniintindi mo, yung political career mo. Hindi yung hinal ka ng tao at yung para what is good for the country. Dapat ang priority, what will be good for the country, what will be good for the people. Di ba? Bahala na kung anong mangyari sa political career ko thereafter. Basta't ako, kikilos ako ng tama. Dapat ganun ang attitude ng senador.
Kung sakasakali po, do you think you have enough numbers to become Senate President?
Who knows? I don't know. Well, at this point, I can't say. I don't think so. I don't think we have a member of the Senate with more than 13 votes right now, but anything can happen on July 28. If nothing happens by July 28, there can be things that can happen before the end of the year. This is not a permanent. This is not a permanent thing. Hindi ba? Maraming pwedeng mangyari. Hindi natin masabi.
Given the way the Senate President, the incumbent, has taken also that seat, medyo mabilisan din yun, Oo. Pero pagdating naman po dito sa impeachment trial, mukhang talagang wala nang choice kundi pag-usapan ito sa susunod na Kongreso. Tama po ba? Kasi mayroon po 2 request yung Senado. One is to have the constitutionality certified. Kung pina-follow nga nila yung rule na only one impeachment case filed in a year. At yung pangalawa ay to communicate with the 20th Congress kung sila ay amenable pa rin to pursuing the impeachment. Mukhang wala nang choice doon sa hiling ng Senado, hindi po ba?
Una, winiweigh ko yan eh. Winiweigh ko yung in favor, yung issue na, ito ba crossover? Carry over ba ito o hindi? Nung binagpag-aralan ko yan, nung una, ang tingin ko, hindi eh. Pero once you review all the issues, mas mabigat yung maka 60-40. Talagang pwedeng crossover talaga. Pwedeng carry over. Now, in that case, important thing for a senator is you do not lawyer for the defense and you do not lawyer for the prosecution. Senator Judge Kay. So whether it's carried over or if it now, ang importante, kumilos ka ng maayos. Kumilos ka na impartial ka. Pag-usapan mo yung, may articles of impeachment eh. Yung sinasabi nila na yung 1-year ban, okay. Ang pinipilit ng iba, kasi daw may nag-file noong December, di ba? Meron nag-file December, meron sumunod na nag-file, puro December yan. Binibilang nila yun eh. Mali. Ang bilangin nila, yung sinubmit. Tignan nila muna yung konstitusyon. Tignan nila kung kailan sinubmit sa Office of the Speaker. Office of the Speaker, sinubmit January. So kung 1-year ban, from January of 2025. Kaya January 2026 ka pwede mag-file uli ng another impeachment for that particular issue of the impeachment. Kaya yung merong isa ata jurisdictional yung sinasabi nung remand resolution nila, no? Na meron sinasabi na kasi daw tatlo yung nag-file pagkatapos ito wala lahat yun. Kung o-honor mo yung gano'n, by buwan-buwan pwede kang filean eh. Hindi gano'n. Ang importante ron, nag-meeting yung rules committee nila, yun, kung anong committee ang in charge sa kanila, at sinubmit nila sa Senate, sa Speaker. Yun ang dapat i-honor.
Sabi niyo po, binushwak ni Senate President Chis Escudero.
No, what I said was the Senate leadership bushwhacked the articles of impeachment on day one. Because when they received it, they did not refer it to the Committee on Rules, which should have been the proper action to take.
Ano po ibig sabihin ng bushwhack?
Inambush. Inambush.
Ayun pala yun.
Oo.
That was former Senate President and Senator-elect Tito Sotto reacting to the recent happenings over at the Senate. He is set for a 5th historic term in the upcoming 20th Congress. Watch the full interview of that on Long Take that is upcoming here on One News. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning and your weekend. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Hall. We are One News, all sides, all the time.